Welcome back into the Door Report. It is episode 49. It is Friday, November 20th. Celebrate, it's Friday, and we're back and better than ever with the Door Report. We are, as always, presented by Alaco Hardwood Flooring. Well, I'm still down here in Naples. You're in Nashville. I'll be back up in Nashville. I'll be leaving tomorrow morning, so I'll be watching the Florida Vandy game in the car. Definitely have to rely on your updates there, getting in the bad service areas. But definitely later in the pod, we will be joined by David Waters, also known as Gator Dave, and we had a great talk with him. So we'll definitely be looking forward to showing that one. But Vandy-Florida, should be interesting. Florida's a 31-point favorite. This game is in Nashville, a little bit of a different attendance policy, but we'll see what happens tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you've got this. This is probably, I don't want to say the most boring preview show that we'll have done, but a lot of it's going to be analyzing whether or not Vanderbilt's able to keep that score underneath the spread underneath that line, that 31.5 that it shifted out to, because, man, this Florida offense has been absolutely unstoppable.
Man, they've just been lethal because you look at a guy like Kyle Trask, who played really well last year, and he stepped it up even more. And we'll talk a lot about that with David Waters, how he's a potential Heisman candidate right now. Before we get into some more breaking news, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Door_report, at Instagram, Door.report, on Facebook as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, who's definitely getting some more steam right now. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, go give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, Will, let's get into some basketball before we get going with the Florida preview. How about this? Aaron Nesmith selected 14th overall to the Boston Celtics. Your team. I can't believe it actually happened. That actually happened. So Nesmith to the Celtics. And Saban Lee also selected 38th overall in the second round to the Detroit Pistons off of a trade. So how about that? I didn't think I would see Saban Lee drafted a couple nights ago, but definitely a big night for Vanderbilt basketball. And it's something that Stackhouse and Bryce Drew can both be proud of, because Drew got those guys in and he definitely coached them up. But Stackhouse, I think, developed them into the pros they are.
Yeah, it's a good thing to see for Stackhouse going into year 2 that he's got 2 guys that he didn't necessarily bring in, but was able to develop to the point as NBA prospects, that they were both drafted. And we discussed it, the Nesmith being a lottery pick, he actually fell a little bit lower than I anticipated, which is why I didn't think the Celtics were going to be able to get him. But Saban Lee not only being a second-round draft choice, but a very high second-round draft choice. So obviously what I said about him needing to stay in, he doesn't get that guaranteed contract like he would as a first-round pick, which I think he had the potential to be. But obviously his advisors were more well-informed than even a lot of these draft experts that we see. But on to Nesmith, that he's in an incredible spot in Boston.
Hayward
declined his player option, his $34 million player option, so he'll be a free agent. I think he saw the writing on the wall there with them drafting Nesmith. So he's going to be in there with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and he's actually going to be playing alongside his former opponent, Grant Williams.
And
Grant, a lot of Tennessee guys.
Grant actually tweeted, I don't know if you saw it, there was a tweet from a local Nashville reporter, quote tweeting Aaron Nesmith's tweet about, I'm glad to be in Boston. And then Grant quote tweeted that and said, he talked about his 43 piece again in Nashville, when he dropped 43, and he said he can give him some advice. And then he said, JK, but I mean, I think he could also teach him how to flop a little bit too, as he showed late in that one. But
he's got Marcus Smart there, so if he wants to learn how to flop a little bit, they're certainly the guys.
There's plenty of guys in Boston for that. But yeah, Nesmith, you look at his career at Vanderbilt. He played more than Darius Garland did. He got opportunity to play at Vanderbilt, and obviously, unfortunately, he didn't get to finish it off. But like you said, Will, great spot for him. I mean, he has the potential to come off the bench as a 6th, 7th guy and get a lot of minutes as a spot-up shooter, but also shows versatility in the paint, getting to the bucket. And then Saban Lee, he's an athletic guy that can be worked with. He can be developed by an NBA coach. And honestly, with Saban, I don't know how much he's going to be playing. He could be a guy that moves up through the G League. We don't know if he's going to be starting in Detroit. But again, he could create a new Lob City there potentially with Blake Griffin if he gets a little bit more playing time. But these guys, definitely a congrats. And do you think it says more about Bryce Drew or Jerry Stackhouse? Because that's kind of a question I thought about, and it's really close for me. I think like Bryce Drew brought them in, yes, but boy, the work Stack did to develop them, and they've said it. Neesmith has said it. Without Stack, I don't know if I'm where I am right now. So that I think you could argue Stackhouse.
Yeah, I think it says more in a, I don't want to say negative, but positive and negative way about Bryce Drew and that how good of a recruiter he was.
Mm.
Because I think it was a picture, I don't know who posted it on Twitter, but it was of Simi Shitu, Darius Garland, Aaron Neesmith, and Saban Lee.
Mm.
And the Garland injury issue, and then Shitu tearing his ACL his senior year in high school. Those are things out of Bryce Drew's control, but he still had Neesmith and Saban Lee. He had two NBA players
Yeah.
on that roster, unable to win with them. So he's an incredible recruiter. I don't know if he was ready to step up to the SEC level of basketball, but Stackhouse's player development is his appeal to players. He had a long, successful NBA career. And that's why guys need to be looking at Vanderbilt as an option, because you've got a guy that knows what it takes to develop
Mm-hmm.
you into an NBA draft prospect and move you up to that next level. And I think the guy that shows it the most isn't necessarily Aaron Neesmith. I think it's almost Saban Lee, because he was a kind of a fringe guy, maybe even
Yeah.
after his senior season. 1 year of development under Stackhouse, and all of a sudden he's the 38th overall pick after leaving
Yeah.
early for the draft.
And
I think it is a
that's
really, really good look for this Vanderbilt program.
it is, and I think it kind of it's another step in the right direction for Stackhouse, because recruits are looking at this. Recruits see two Vanderbilt players drafted, and what was it? Will two Vanderbilt had it was one of only 7 college teams that have 2 guys drafted, and in the last 2 years you had Darius Garland, lottery pick, Aaron Neesmith, lottery pick. That's one of only 2 teams. Obviously, you had Kentucky, but Vanderbilt's the only team in the SEC to have 2 lottery picks in the past 2 years. So really incredible what the program has done with those players. Again, they haven't won a lot with them, and that's kind of the kicker there. But boy, definitely some momentum for Stackhouse, and hopefully this creates a little bit of recruiting buzz, like you talk about, Will.
Yeah, I do want to mention one thing with
Yep.
Neesmith before we move on with where he landed in Boston, because just for
There we go.
selfishly, I'm glad to watch him. But as far as actually a place for him to succeed, he's in about as good a spot as he can be. He's got Brad Stevens coaching him. He's going to be playing
Perfect.
alongside 2 guys that honestly he's a mesh between in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
Brown's more that pure athletic scorer, and Tatum is obviously just unreal and a burgeoning superstar. So him sandwiched in the middle of those guys and being able to develop his game and that young core they have. It could be something that Vanderbilt fans, if you don't have an NBA team, because there's not one in Nashville, they're going to be really fun to watch in the upcoming years.
No doubt. When does the Neesmith Boston jersey come in for you?
Oh, it's coming in soon. I'll tell you that.
Oh man! So there it is. Neesmith to the Celtics, Lee to the Pistons, and those are your guys for Vanderbilt, especially Neesmith now for our guy Will Byram. Moving on now to the Vandy-Florida game. Looking at the line, Will, it's up to 31. It started around 30, but looking at it now, again, it is 31 and a half. So Florida. A lot of money, being put in on Florida, and the over under is 68. So if you're a betting man, you haven't had a whole lot of success if you've bet on Vanderbilt to cover. But in this one, Florida, they're 5-1. They've only lost 1 game. They beat Georgia, and for Vanderbilt coming in at 0-6, this is just, you mentioned it, Will, kind of a nightmare matchup right now, and the way Kyle Trask has been playing. As compared to Vanderbilt's defense, it should be quite the experience for that defense, and especially we talked about it with David Waters. If Vanderbilt gets off to a better start, you could see a closer first half. But with this game being 4 quarters, I just don't see Vanderbilt being close.
Yeah, you mentioned Kyle Trask is a Heisman candidate. He's not just a Heisman candidate, but depending on week to week, him and Trevor Lawrence are the top 2 money or odds-on favorites to win the Heisman. So They're right now, I believe Kyle Trask is second at plus 230 to win the Heisman, and Lawrence is plus 200. But that's been kind of swapping back and forth. So he's not just a candidate. It's probably going to be him or Trevor Lawrence,
Yeah.
depending on week to week how their performance goes. But this Vanderbilt game, getting more into the preview, it's hard for me to see. We always like to do keys of what we need to see from Vanderbilt to potentially win this game. It's this matchup right now for Vanderbilt is probably the worst matchup they've had the entire season. You basically have an unstoppable offense that predicates itself on its passing game, which is Vanderbilt's weakness on defense. Florida's defense is middle of the pack, so it gives some opportunities for Ken Seals to move the ball down the field, but they're also first in sacks. So our offensive line has a lot to deal with on that Florida defensive line, keeping Ken Seals upright and opening up running holes. So it's kind of a nightmare matchup, honestly. And Vanderbilt, one thing that we mentioned, and you'll hear it later in the interview, but Florida has kind of struggled initially in that first quarter, and I said something has to give because, or not really struggled, but they've been a second quarter team. Vanderbilt, like we've mentioned many a time, is being outscored 66-3 in the first quarter. So that cannot happen unless they want to get beat by 50 plus. They're going to have to come out and have a strong start, unlike they've done in any game thus far this year.
Yeah, Coach Mason, in his press conference preview in Florida, he said Trask just looks like a different quarterback this year. He looks very different than last year in a good way. I mean, it's really ridiculous to see that jump. We talked about it with David, and you'll hear, if you're listening right now, a lot about what David has talked about in terms of the zip on his balls and improved accuracy. And just watching him, we talked off air, Will, that, you've watched every Florida game. I've watched a lot of the Florida games because they're just a fun team to watch. I mean, this offense is so explosive and they can score on you in an instant. The way Trask throws the ball, they don't have Kyle Pitts right now, but offensively, Pierce at running back has played very well, also, and they've got more receivers back there, for Trask to throw to. So if you're Vanderbilt, defensively, there's just not a whole lot you can do. You gave up 38 to Kentucky, not a very good offense. Now you're facing Florida, a top 5 team and one of the better offenses in the nation. It's going to be maybe Derek Mason, calls some different blitzes, some different schemes defensively. But again, like you said, there's probably not a whole lot they can do. But Will, moving on just to Vanderbilt right now as a team, they're 0-6. As I mentioned, there have been a couple close games. The first one against A&M, and then last week, against Kentucky. But right now, if you were to give them a grade, as a team, we talked about grading Ken Seals and Seals with 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. We'll talk about his grade. But as a grade, I think I'd give this team probably, I don't want to say D, but probably a C minus. C minus because, honestly, this offense has definitely exceeded my expectations. Defense is still very, very, very bad. But, you're looking at the offense and they have improved. So I'm going to give them a C minus.
Yeah, it's hard to grade the overall team because there's so many different spots on that team that have struggled or exceeded expectations. And when you're given the grade, you kind of have to figure out, am I doing a sliding scale here? Because the offensive line, just a grade, just watching them, not knowing the situation, they're probably a C. Knowing what the expectations were before the year, they're an A. So just a stat with that Florida offense before I give the grade of the team that kind of blew my mind. The least points that they have scored this entire year is 38 points. The most points that Vanderbilt has scored this year is 35 points. So that doesn't bode well. That's just one stat that I wanted to get out there. But I don't know if I can give the overall team a grade. I think the area that would probably get the worst grade from me, getting a D minus, would be the front 7. They're the only part of this team that had expectations going into the year, and they've been bad. So you've got a couple guys that you're going to be seeing playing on Sundays, and this front 7 is completely underperformed, and you saw that really, really prevalent last week against Kentucky. So I would give the defense a D, and I would give the offense a C plus probably. But that's just based on the last 3 weeks, because the offense was really piss poor through the first 3 weeks of the season. So we'll have to see how it finishes out these last 4. But overall team grade, I think I would give it a D+.
And I mean, looking at Florida, they're definitely in the A range right now for their team. They're scoring 45 points a game. Listen to these stats through the air, though, Will. I mean, you've probably already taken a look at these, but they're averaging 371 passing yards per game, 29 touchdowns. They've got 29 touchdowns through the air. That's unreal, unheard of. And they got total yards, 2,230. They run 417 total plays. That's ridiculous too. Just running plays in terms of tempo and so for Vanderbilt, any way they can slow down this offense, whether that's stacking the box in the run. But I think for Florida right now, their run game is their pass game. You could argue that those short passes to Pierce, is their run game. And receiving. You've got guys like Kadarius Toney as well. Who, I mean, you look at them, he's as explosive as it gets in the SEC as well. So, again, plenty of weapons at the disposal for Kyle Trask. We'll see what happens. Kickoff is set for noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. That game is on ESPN. So that'll be right after game day. A lot of eyes will be on that game early. So we'll see how hot of a start Florida or Vanderbilt to get off to. So it's kind of a big game for Trask in terms of, getting some coverage out on him, more eyes on him. But let's get a predictions now. With Florida being a 31.5-point favorite, how do you see this game going? And how do you I'll just ask it straight up. Do you think Florida covers and then give us a pick?
I think that line is a lot of points because anytime you see something more than 4 scores, a lot of times a team can completely dominate the game and then, kind of let off the gas mid to late third quarter. Being a little bit of sportsmanship showing, and that game can kind of sneak in back under the line, get a backdoor cover. I don't see that happening against Florida. They dropped the game against Texas A&M. They're looking to be in that college football playoff, and they can't have a game against Vanderbilt just be a 21-point victory.
Mm-hmm.
So I 100% think that Florida covers this spread. I think that the over-under is going to get its doors blown off at that 68 points.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So I think that my final score prediction is going to be, and it's hard when you get up here, but 61-20 is my score prediction. So I think if Florida won,
a little bit like the LSU game last year.
Yeah, they'll tone it down a little bit towards the end of the game. I think Florida is going to be – I don't think we will get one stop. In my opinion, I hope I'm horribly wrong and we come out and we stifle them. But I don't want to graze over that statistic that you put out with them having 29 pass touchdowns this year because that sounds like a lot, but you see these gaudy stats in the NFL. Just for some context, Florida has played one less game than a lot of these teams too. Mm-hmm. Next closest is Ole Miss, who we've all heard about their passing attack. They've played a whole one more game than Florida, and they only have 23. And then there's no other team in the SEC with over 20. And then there's only 6 total teams out of the 14 in the SEC that even have double-digit passing touchdowns. And Florida has 29. So I just want Vanderbilt fans to have it in their mind when they see this Florida team come out that our secondary's already struggled, and every secondary in the country has struggled. They absolutely moved the ball effortlessly against Georgia, who has a top 5 defense, not just in the SEC, but in the entirety of the country. And they made them look like a bottom tier defense. So keep the expectations in check for Vanderbilt fans. You can't let a blowout loss here derail any of the momentum that we've kind of felt in these past 2 games against Mississippi State and Kentucky, and let that take away from the feeling that you have that things are kind of moving in the right direction and things are maybe starting to click a little bit for this young roster.
All right, I'm going to go with Florida to cover as well. I think it's going to be a close, and I think there will be a chance for a backdoor cover, but I don't think Vandy gets it. Florida, they're just too good. They're too good. This is a great Florida team, one of the better Florida teams in the past decade, I think, at least in terms of offense. You could put an asterisk next to the season, but with how good they are, I just don't think Vanderbilt can do enough defensively to stop them. I'm going to go not quite 60. I'll go 57 to 17. Random score. I don't even know if that's gonna.
Why'd you build that up like you were gonna make it closer? You made it this almost the same exact.
Almost the same exact margin there, but not quite 60 points for Florida. But again, we'll have to see. Kyle Trask this season, well over 2,000 yards passing, we'll see if he stays hot, and we'll have to see what kind of effort Derek Mason's team comes out with. I'm ready to see Ken Seals again. Per usual, week after week, to see him get better and see if he makes some explosive plays, because David Waters talks about it here momentarily with Ken Seals and his explosive plays. So speaking of David Waters, Gator Dave is coming right up here on the Door Report after segment number 1. Let's ride. Welcome back into the Door Report, presented by Alaco Hardwood Flooring. David Waters, also known as Gator Dave, joins us here on the podcast. You can hear him on the Gators Breakdown podcast along with Will Miles. He's also featured on News 4 Jacksonville. He's your go-to guy for Gators football, and it's probably been an interesting season for you to cover, David, but an exciting one because the Gators are playing well this year.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the year everybody was pointing to for Dan Mullen in his third year. And given everything, of course, the crazy offseason and everything kind of Georgia was going through with losing Jake Fromm and some offensive linemen and DeAndre Swift. And we knew they had that defense coming back. But everybody kind of pointed to this year for Dan Mullen in year 3 to be the year to get over that Georgia hump. That happened. And, you had the early season loss to Texas A&M that far as, really no room for error right now. But kind of, everybody pointed to this year, and Florida right now, after getting past that Georgia hump, still has everything to play for.
Yeah, boy, what a big win that Georgia game was, to get for Florida, and after, struggling here in the past few years against them. I want to ask you about the big-time receiver, Kyle Pitts. He didn't play last week. Can you give us an update on him and where he is with that injury, and maybe if the Gators could get him back at all this year? Yeah,
nasty hit there going against Georgia there, and we knew he'd be out last week for sure. Probably keeping him out this week for precaution reasons. We'll see when he'll be back. Still no word on that, but he'll be out versus Vanderbilt. It kind of was a little bit worse than, of course, the concussion part of the hit, but it also looks like he may have suffered some nose damage as well. Actually had to have some type of nose surgery after that happened. So probably a little more serious than we initially thought. We initially thought just concussion, which is bad enough in of itself. You don't know when you can come out of that concussion protocol. But heard he was struggling a bit last week, and then the nose issue, of course, as well. So Florida, I'm sure, hopes to have him back versus Kentucky and Tennessee, LSU coming up before you kind of get back in your routine versus before you take on Alabama in the SEC championship game. But out last week, out this week for Kyle Pitts, and we'll see when he's back.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that offense, they probably won't need him to get these victories here late in the season, but you mentioned Alabama game. Boy, do they want him back for that one. The other Kyle Trask I want to talk about, your quarterback, he's a Heisman candidate this year, no doubt, and a lot of people have picked him to win the Heisman. So that's the way he's played, and his stats are very comparable to Joe Burrow's last year, maybe some even better. So what have you seen from him that in terms of that step up from last year and how different he's been from last year? He was a good quarterback last year, but this season, I mean, what a jump.
Yeah, that was you said the word jump, and everybody kind of wondered, hey, look, he played so well last year. Could he take a leap up? And if he did take that leap up, you would start comparing him, numbers-wise at least, to what Joe Burrow did last year. And that was the biggest question. That was an historic season for Joe Burrow. And if Kyle Trask could improve his game any, then that's where he was going to be. Well, he's done that, and that's where he's at. So the numbers back it up. The production passes backs it up as well. But it was just, what things could he work on, being now known as the starter in the offseason? Now, of course, the crazy COVID offseason, so spring wasn't normal. You weren't able to get with your wide receivers. Florida lost a lot of receivers last year, and everybody was like, oh, there's no way they can replace those wide receivers and be a better offense. Well, they did that. You still had Kyle Pitts coming back, but you lost Swain and Hammond and Jefferson and Tyree Cleveland. It was just like, man, you lose so many weapons. There's no way that passing game doesn't take a step back. Well, it hasn't, and it's actually grown because of Kyle Trask. He is a guy who elevates everybody around him right now, and that's what this offense is built on. It's built on him and him making that leap this past year. And it was my thing is, what could he show on the field that would be different? Mentally, you could tell from when he came in for Felipe Franks against Kentucky last year, he was ready to go. So you knew mentally he was going to do everything he had to do. But what physically could he do to get better? And his ball placement is miles ahead of what we saw last year. He throws receivers open. He throws away from defenders where only his receiver can catch the ball. I mean, it's just that, and throwing the ball downfield a bit more, showing a strong arm. He's coming off his best game, in my opinion, ever for Kyle Trask at Arkansas last week, where he showed zip on the ball in a more consistent way than we've ever seen it. And he had to fit the ball in some tight windows versus that Arkansas defense, and he did it. And so he's pretty much answered every question we had about him in the offseason, and that's why he's putting up the numbers he's putting up.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that talented offense for the Gators, and it's very well known around the country just how lethal that offense is. But moving to the other side of the ball, the defense for the Gators has been okay, about middle of the pack in pretty much every statistical category in the SEC. Is that a concern for you, and where do you see that needing to improve if the Gators are going to make it to the college football playoff this year?
Yeah, dude, it's kind of two stories with this offense or this defense right now. And look, if you know Todd Grantham, there's a moniker around Todd Grantham, Third and Grantham.
Fans know him very well.
Yeah. So it's reared its ugly head the beginning part of the season. And one of the worst Third and Grantham performances that we saw was against Texas A&M. Florida's only lost this year. It was terrible, that game. And then Florida got hit with the COVID issue, was out for a couple weeks, and they've improved up drastically in third down defense. But you've traded that for giving up a lot of explosive plays lately. Georgia should have hit more down the field. Arkansas did hit a couple of explosive plays. They held Missouri in check a couple weeks ago, so Missouri didn't do a whole lot to that Gator defense. But, yeah, I mean, you've traded your third down defense, and I put it this way, I'll take it this way of giving up the explosives because at least it gets your offense back out there and to go score some more points. When you're giving up third down after third down after third down, Texas A&M did it, South Carolina did it, Ole Miss did it. They were able to keep their offense on the field in the second half and keep the Florida offense on the sideline in the second half. So don't get me wrong, they have a ways to go. I still think they're trying to figure out their best 11 on the field. They've dealt with some injuries. They've dealt with COVID, so they haven't really been able to play with I think what they might consider their best 11. Kyrie Campbell coming back a few weeks ago really solidified the front. That's where they've gotten better. I think that's why the third down defense has gotten better, but also it's gotten better because of the opponents. So what can you fix? So if you're having explosive problems right now versus Arkansas, and Georgia should have been able to take advantage of a couple more, Alabama's licking their chops for their 40, 50-yard bombs that they throw left and right. Oh, yeah. So Florida's got to fix that coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, they definitely do. And in terms of, the line in this one, Florida's about a 31 point favorite around. Do you think they cover? Because Vanderbilt has been, over the years they've been sneaky, but this year I'm sure a lot of people in Vegas have lost a lot of money on them. So in terms of that line, it is in Nashville, and Florida will have an allotment of fans there, but the crowd will likely not play a part. Do you think Florida covers that?
I think my score I picked, it was 52-20 on my show. So they would be 30, it'd be 32. So it'd be right there on the line.
Right on it.
So, that's about where I see it now. This offense, it's on fire right now. And until I see it not on fire, then I guess I kind of have to worry about it, and then go back to Florida Vandy last year. I know you don't take too much away from, you don't use the transfer property year to year. That gets you in trouble, but it's just one data point we can point to when we're looking at this game. So we'll kind of see there where it goes. I know I'll probably expect Florida to put up some points early, and then maybe Vanderbilt, they maybe kind of scratch their way back a little bit, because that's kind of what has been the story for Vanderbilt a little bit this year anyway, is giving up some points early and then maybe clawing their way back. So Florida offense isn't in sync. This is probably the first game of the season where they aren't in sync. If it's a close game at halftime, I expect Vanderbilt to play it pretty safe on both sides of the ball. Slow the game down if you can with the run game. Play a lot of prevent dime defense to maybe not get beat deep by this Florida offense, and just take your chances that way and seeing it. But I got to see this Florida offense stop before I believe it can be stopped.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Dave, it seems like the Florida Vandy rivalry, I don't know if you're going to call it a rivalry, whatever it is, the series, the past 3-4 years has been very interesting. And obviously you saw the chippiness a couple years ago too at Vanderbilt Stadium. So obviously Probably still a little bit of hatred on either side, but in terms of the atmosphere, Florida is allowed a certain allotment of fans. How do you think they'll travel to Nashville, especially with all the COVID protocols? And Will, I don't know if we have a number on that quite yet, but in terms of Florida fans potentially coming to Vanderbilt Stadium, do you have any intel on that?
I will say this is probably the most asked about game I've been about. Hey, do you know where I can find tickets? So, which is, I mean, I know Gator fans love going to Nashville and taking that trip. But from what I can gather, tickets are probably pretty hard to come by because I've had a few requests that, hey, do you know where I can find tickets? I'm like, I really don't. Vanderbilt's website, there's none to be found. So I don't know if there's much on the secondary market. I haven't dived into it that far, but I'm assuming player families can go or.
Yeah, it's right now. This will be the first game that actually parents are allowed in Vanderbilt Stadium. So it'll be parents and family members and maybe a short friend or friends and extended family list as well for players.
Yeah, because I'm on Bill King's show there in Nashville every Tuesday, and one of his listeners had sent to me that, hey, we're allowing some sort of fans this week. So I wasn't sure.
There's no tickets or anything actually offered because I'm a season ticket, but no tickets offered to fans or anything like that. And there's not even any on a secondary market either.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with that one. So
they're like, hey, can I scalp some? I'm like, I don't even think you can scalp them. So
I guess you can't really answer that question right now.
But I will say there has been a lot of, I guess, because you can't find tickets. I guess that's why I'm being asked a lot. Hey, do you know where I can find tickets?
Yeah, but no, I mean, this series though, it's definitely been fun to kind of keep an eye on. I want to go to Vandy's side now. You mentioned the line; it's about a 31 right now. Vanderbilt keeps this game close if what? Where do you fill in that blank? I know you touched on it a little bit, but as a whole, how do you think they keep it close?
I think Ken Stills, man, he's in the offense. Y'all are not afraid to throw the ball down the field. As I said, Florida's given up some explosives the last few weeks. So, you stay in it and you let Stills use his big arm and see if he can beat this Florida secondary deep like so many people have. And then toward the beginning of the season, Florida give up a lot of yards to like one particular receiver of each team. Elijah Moore burnt Florida time and time again. Shi Smith for South Carolina burnt Florida again. In Texas A&M game, I forget the receiver's name. He got hurt in that game, but he burnt Florida. So the first three games, Florida give up a whole lot of yards to one particular receiver in each game. So Chris Pierce Jr. here for Vanderbilt, I mean, he's been coming on a whole lot lately too. As Stills has been progressing, so has Pierce's numbers kind of went up a bit too in these last few games. So Florida can't fix the explosives in their pass defense, and I think you can look for Stills and Pierce to maybe beat Florida for a couple of deep shots. And if you do that early on and you get some confidence in this Vanderbilt team, then I do think that's the route to maybe get into a shootout. I don't see Vandy's defense doing much to stop Florida's offense, but I can see if Florida defense, gets not down, but lets a couple scores happen early, then maybe confidence on that side of the ball goes down a bit and you find yourself in a shootout.
Yeah, I don't think any defense has been able to slow down that Florida defense.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a shot at Vandy. That's any defense. Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia's was supposedly one of the top 5 or 10 defenses in the country, and y'all put up 44 points on them. So I don't know if there's really a scheme to stop this I don't want to say it, but historic record-setting offense, because you're doing this against only SEC defenses, as opposed to an offense like LSU last year that has 4 out-of-conference games.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you've thrown at Kyle Trask, zone, man, blitz, throw everybody back. I mean, Arkansas time and time again last week only rushed 3, dropped 8, and it didn't matter. As I said, he had to go and fit it into tight windows because they were dropping 8 in the coverage. And he did it. So, I mean, Trask has just been able, whatever you've thrown at him, he's been able to go and keep putting up numbers.
Now we're going to time now to get you a game pick here, Dave. Obviously, you mentioned your score 52-20, but on this one, how do you think, the course of the game files out, and in terms of prediction, being at Vanderbilt, early kick, if Florida's sleepwalking, could see a closer game than people expect. But in terms of this one, give us a game pick.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think Florida had a 3:30 game versus Georgia and a night game versus Missouri. I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. Every other game's been at noon for Florida. So the noon kicks haven't really slowed them down just yet. But I can see, and we've seen it a good bit the last week, probably giving up an early explosive. Like I said, it has happened against Georgia. It happened against Arkansas last week. So we'll see. And as I said, I believe in Sills' arm. And I think as every week that we've seen Vanderbilt, we've seen, I think, a confidence in him being able to do that even more. So I think as, probably an early bomb that Vanderbilt connects on. And first quarter may look kind of questionable there, but Florida has, dominated the second quarter this year. And it's not even Florida. The Georgia game, they went down 14-0. And then at halftime, it was 38-14. So, and then last week did it again against Arkansas. So I can see a tight game in the first quarter and kind of just following the same trend Florida has followed lately, puts up a big second quarter.
Yeah, something's got to give because so far throughout the first quarter this season, Vanderbilt is being outscored 66-3. So something's got to give in that first quarter in this upcoming game. But
hey, we'll see. Yeah, we'll definitely see because you look at Vanderbilt this year. You mentioned the slow start. If they find a way to get off to a fast start, and then you could see a close first half, Florida's going to have to play well in the second. So we'll see. But one thing I will say, Will, right now, I know Gators Breakdown, that podcast is a step ahead of us because of that backdrop that Gator Dave has right now.
Yeah, we got to step it up for us.
My goodness, we got some automated here. We're going to have to get us a couple studios to get that up and running. But Dave, thanks a lot for taking the time. Impressive studio behind you. Can't wait. Good luck with your coverage. Are you making the trip to Nashville or no?
I am not. This is actually the year I was planning on making it, but TV station is like, we're not sending anybody out in the COVID world right now. Yeah. So it's kind of just the way it is. But I want to make the trip because I want to say, hey, Bill, I'm coming in on Friday. Let me hit your show on Friday morning instead of Tuesday morning. Yeah. And then make the game there on Saturday. So hopefully in 2022.
Yeah, well, hopefully so. And again, we'll continue to monitor that Florida Kyle Pitts, situation. Same with Kyle Trask, see if he wins a Heisman. And again, good luck tomorrow. And, thanks for taking the time. And let's see what happens tomorrow.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dave. That was David Waters of Gators Breakdown here on the Dore Report.